I can't imagine falling out with somebody over wrestling direction and opinions on wrestling.
It's not, you know what the funny part is? It's not even opinions on wrestling. I guess it is to a degree. I guess, you know what? It is to a degree. But it really is. It's really over. Um, and you know, the Cornette thing is, I don't know. It really is over Kenny Omega. You know, it's not even over wrestling. I mean, he creates these things. And I mean, I think in his own mind, it's like I don't know. I mean, no, number one, he doesn't understand modern wrestling whatsoever, which is, I think, part of it. And it's sad because if you talk to anybody about wrestling pre 2005, you will find that there are very few who are smarter than Jim Cornette. I would put him right near the top, not just knowledge, but applicable knowledge, which is you know, because a lot of people have historical knowledge, you know, read books and everything, but they don't really know the context or understand the business. I mean, he had applicable knowledge of that business. And then, you know, the business changed and he didn't change, and he still doesn't understand that the business always changes. And it's the funny part is that the Jim Cornette of the 80s is 180 degrees different from this Jim Cornette. The Jim Cornette of the 80s, this Jim Cornette would hate the Jim Cornette of the 80s. He would hate the manager with a tennis racket. You know what I mean? I mean, because if he'd grown up 30 years earlier, there'd be no character like Jim Cornette. And he would hate the gimmicks like the, you know, wearing a diaper if you lose the fall and things like that. I mean, he would have despised it, but he doesn't have that perspective to understand that times change. So now things have changed in a different direction and he despises them. And it's funny because, like, the guys who started this direction, I mean, he was the first guy in the business in the United States, you know, who understood Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask and Japanese wrestling. And now, you know, because, you know, and he'll have his rationales, but essentially the guys that he hates now are the guys who are the disciples who learned from watching those same tapes and then took it, you know, one step further and made it, you know, more acrobatic and things like that. But it's not even just acrobatic, but they made it, you know, more acrobatic, but more layers and more depth to the match and more thinking about the match, which is the thing that I think people don't understand. Like, they'll just go like, oh, it's flips. And it's like, you know, just flips means nothing. You know what I mean? It's like, you've got to hook the people. But when these guys do, whether they use flips or don't use flips to hook the people, you know, he will, he'll try to deny it. You know, like before, when with AEW, just an example, it was, you know, it was always like, well, if you get the crowd going, I mean, that makes you a good worker. And then, you know, AEW would have these great live crowds. I mean, just loud for everything. You know, that doesn't count because those fans will pop for anything. And it's like, well, what makes them different from the fans when you worked in the Carolinas that would pop for anything? You know, it's like, it's real. Isn't it a good thing that you've got an audience that really loves your product? How is that a negative when it comes to pro wrestling? So it's like, you just twist yourself into corners and things like that.
Do you smell what the Rock is cooking?
Enough is enough!
Rudy Poo Kenya!
I had him writhing in pain from my sharpshooter.
Rocky!
I am not a nugget!
Stick him straight up your candy ass!
I kicked your leg out of your leg.
The Rock has come back!